Hello, guys. Welcome to episode 6 of the Top 2 podcast. I'm your host, Luke. This is my co-host, Matt. Matt, say hello.
How's it going, everyone? You all right?
This week we've got a lot for you. We've got a look back at last weekend's games as well as 2 sets of fixtures to look forward to this week. Obviously, with the midweek games in the Championship and the weekend fixtures. Let's dive straight in. Matt, Birmingham, Watford. What were your thoughts on Birmingham?
Well, Birmingham, they currently sit in 12th, but they were absolutely dominated by Cardiff. They didn't really get a chance in that game. Cardiff, I thought they played that game absolutely brilliantly. They should have went two, maybe three or four more down. They was lucky really to lose just the one goal down. I thought they were really, really lucky to not get heavily beaten in this game. What do you think?
I thought John Ruddy had another excellent game. That seems to be 3 out of 3 now that we've came on this pod and we've said about how John Ruddy's been excellent. You know, he made a fantastic double save, made some really good saves from O'Dowd, who I thought was phenomenal. We'll talk about him when we speak about Cardiff. I do feel Birmingham should have had a penalty. I thought Kipre did go into Scott Hogan. There was contact. He did go down. For me, that should have been a penalty and that could have changed the outcome of the game. But Birmingham do have a problem scoring goals. We've spoke about it before. Eustace has them really hard to beat, but they're not really very pragmatic the other end of the pitch. They don't create bundles of chances. They're not very clinical with the ones they do have. So yeah, I think Cardiff are really good value. A little bit of an off day for Birmingham, which they'll be hoping to rectify against Watford. With regards to Watford, they're currently sat in third. For me, they're getting a really decent bit of luck going their way at the minute. Speaking of the West Brom result, you know, they drew 1-1, they scored an absolute wonder goal. But other than that, it was 70, 80 minutes of them being dominated. Against Burnley, they were dominated all game, but Burnley just couldn't find a way past Dan Backman, he's another goalkeeper who's having a fantastic, fantastic season. Brownhill had 3 chances to score for Burnley, all saved from Backman. It was a smash and grab again from Watford for me. Lovely precision finish by Tom Cleverley, and I thought Hamza Chowdhury had a really good debut. I thought he really helped protect the back five. Lots of energy in midfield, which they didn't really have against West Brom, which meant they kept having stuff from wave of attack. They did neutralise Burnley at times, but I think that it was more Watford have a bit of luck going their way at the minute. Like, they'll still be up there. The fact that they're not playing particularly well, and you know they've got a point against West Brom, they beat Burnley. Like, for me, they'll still be up there, and when they start playing better. But right now, they're currently riding their luck for me. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's the story of what a lot of teams can be seeing before the window closes, and sometimes it's the difference of strikers. I know Cleverley was the one that scored, but when we've seen quite a few teams dominate so far, but not getting the amount of goals, not getting the 1 goal, but 2 goals, or even 3 goals that they may need to win the game because they don't simply don't have the strikers of what the other teams have in this division, and that really can be the difference between finishing mid-table, finishing bottom half, or finishing in the top half of the table towards the top end.
Yeah, I agree. So for this game, I'll be honest, I don't see Birmingham fighting away past the Watford defence. And I don't see Birmingham holding out for 90 minutes unless you see an absolute John Ruddy masterclass. Something I forgot to touch on about Birmingham is they really need fullbacks. Don't get me wrong, O'Dowd has had a fantastic start of the season for me. But every attack was coming down Birmingham's left or right. It was always the wide areas that were getting turned over consistently. They've only got one registered fullback in their club now that George Friend sort of moved to centre-back. They've got Maxime Collin, that's it. They've been playing trusty left back. They've been playing Plaqueta left back. These aren't natural fullbacks. So I think Birmingham really need to address the fullbacks in the last part of the window. And on this premise, I've had Watford to win 1-0.
I've actually got Watford to win 3-0. I fancy them to have a good game.
Okay, on to the second game of the weekend. Bristol City Luton. Matt, what were your thoughts on Bristol City?
Well, first thing I want to comment on is Andy Weimann. But now it's 4 games for Andy Weimann, and he's had a brilliant start to the season. But Bristol, not so much a good start to the season, where they sit themselves in 23rd, and it was a good assist from Conway, but they're not finding ways to see out games. They're getting the goals to win the games, but their defence aren't seeing them out, and I think that's going to be a problem towards the end of the season. And Conway himself was fairly lucky not to give away a penalty, because I think it was a clear handball in the box, and I thought Bristol need to do a little bit more to try and get more out of games. What do you think?
I think this weekend was a poor weekend for Championship referees, in my opinion. The Birmingham game should have had in my opinion, two penalties.
Yeah,
The Bristol game should have had, in my opinion, another two penalties, and there was a few more dodgy decisions over the weekend. You mentioned Andy Bodman. We spoke about him on the whole season preview podcast. He
yeah,
is massive for Bristol City.
yeah.
I think there's clubs in this league that could do with a player like that. I think Burnley with Andy Vyman would be brilliant. I think Vyman and Rodriguez, or Vyman and Barnes, or they'll have the goals then to convert the possession that they have.
Yeah,
I thought Tommy Conway had a brilliant game.
yeah,
Obviously, he could have gave the penalty away, but he got the assist for the goal. He had one or two chances to win. He was all over the game. He was
I
brilliant. And
agree.
that followed on from his two goals in the League Cup. But I think, whereas we talk about certain sides having a bit of luck, I think at the minute Bristol have kind of got it against them. Obviously, the defeat to Hull was really unlucky. You know, both goals fortuitous. One was a penalty that should never have been a penalty. And then obviously last weekend, you know, a little bit unfortunate again that they didn't finish around the chances and didn't hold on. Going on to their opponents, Luton's currently 21st, so this is currently 21st versus 23rd, which surprises me really, because I thought Luton were going to have a really good season.
Yeah,
The area that the most surprised me is goals, because we reeled them all off at the start of the season. Morris, Woodrow, Adebayo, Cornick, Onyedinma, Freeman. There is goals there, but they're just not creating chances again. They had 18 shots, but only 2 on target. And I believe only 3 shots came from within the area. You know, could this be second season syndrome in the Championship? Could teams have found out how to play against Nathan Jones and Luton now? Or is it a case of they've just got off the mark? So I'm not sure. I really thought Luton were going to have a good season, but they haven't started well at all. I think this is going to be a scrappy game. I've had a 1-1 draw. What do you think?
yeah. I'm with you. I expected Luton to do a lot better at the start of the season, and as you said, they've got the goals. But for me, I think they're going to struggle again. They're going to try and take a little bit of time to get to find their way, and I've got them to lose 2-1 to Bristol.
Interesting. Going on to the third game now, we've got Burnley versus Hull. As we've just spoken about Watford, I'll start on Burnley. They are, for me, them and Swansea are the best two teams in possession in this league. They keep
Yeah,
the ball really well. There's always movement, whether it's the fullbacks coming on the overlap, the wingers cutting in. All the midfielders are energetic and good on the ball. There's just no cutting edge in this team whatsoever. Ashley Barnes is not the clinical forward he once was. He was poor last season. He's carrying it on for me. He's don't get me wrong, his link-up play is brilliant. He's involving the wingers, the midfielders, but they're just not creating clear-cut chances, and then they're not taking the odd chance that they do have. There's links with Liam Delap. I think he'd be good there. I think they create a bag full of chances for him, and his conversion rate in the Premier League too for Man City is really good. 35 goals in 36 appearances. So obviously, as we just spoke about Watford, I'll go on to Burnley now. Obviously, Burnley Hall's the next game of the weekend. For me, Burnley are one of the best teams in possession of the ball, along with Swansea in the league. You know, they're averaging over 60% possession. They're looking comfortable defensively. All the midfield is comfortable on the ball, but there's just no cutting edge for me. Ashley Barnes isn't the clinical striker that he once was. His link-up play is great. He's involved in the midfield runners. He's involved in the wingers, but he's just not getting in the position himself to score the chances. And when the odd chances fall in his way, he's not taking it. Liam Delap's linked. I think that would be a really good signing for Burnley. Obviously, there's competition there with Stoke and West Brom. Liam Delap scored 35 goals and got 11 assists in 36 Premier League 2 games. I think he's the exact type of forward, like profile-wise, that Burnley need. Someone who's just going to stay in between the posts and get on the end of things, because they've got all the build-up play. They've got the fast movement off the ball. The fullbacks get involved. Matson, I think, is one of the best loan signings of the league. Every time I've watched him, he's a left back in a back four, but he plays like a left winger, and he's never really out of position defensively either. So I think he's been really good for them. But they just need to start taking these chances. I think Rodriguez coming back to fitness will be good for them. But if they could get a Vyman or a Delap, I'd really fancy Burnley's chances of finishing that top 6 a lot more than with what they've currently got. What did you think about Burnley? What do you think about their opponents, Hull?
yeah. I very much agree with what you're saying about Burnley. Ashley Barnes does not seem the striker that he once was. He doesn't seem as clinical as he once was, and I worry about him. How Burnley go forward if they don't sign another proven striker before Jay Rodriguez comes back to full fitness. As for Hull, I feel like as Hull have sitting currently second in the league, they've been a bit fortunate with all the goals that they've scored. I think I think every single one of his goals have been either a sloppy goal, whether it's been a rut in the box, whether it's been a fortunate penalty, whether it's been a massive deflection. But sometimes you have to ride that luck in games to win games, and they've done exactly that so far. And especially when they played Norwich, it was a game where Norwich dominated, and it was a second like it was really poor from Hull all around, and Norwich were brilliant, but they were the ones who came out with the win in the end. And what's your opinions on Hull?
Again, I thought both goals were fortunate. Max Aaron's clearing the ball off Dele, falls right at the feet of Estupiñán, knocked it through Crawl's legs goal. The other one, a scramble in the box. I will say in regards to this game, I think it's more Norwich's poor defending rather than luck. I believe you make your own luck, and unlike Bristol City, where I believe Hull's luck was made for them by the bad refereeing and the very fortunate deflection, I think this was more they capitalised on Norwich's mistakes. Estupiñán got 15 goals last season in Liga NOS, the top league in Portugal. I said he was a signing to look out for. I think he could be a real good finisher in the box. So if the creative players that they've got behind them, Malik Wilkes, Ryan Longman, Aliar, Tete, I feel it, Seri, if they can all provide for him, I really think he could get 15, 20 goals in this league. I think he looks a decent player. More good saves from Matt Ingram as well, from Pookie, from Campbell. He made some real good saves again. And the last chance clearance off the line by Jacob Greaves, who for me is one of the best young centre-backs in the league, along with your likes of Fry, Suter, O'Shea, Harwood Bellis. I think Jacob Greaves is a really good, cultured, left-footed centre-back, and that was a big clearance off the line to get Hull the win. In this game, now I've had a 1-1 draw. What do you think?
I've got Hull to win this 1-0.
Ooh, interesting. That'll be a unpopular opinion. On to the next game, Coventry Wigan. This has been cancelled because of Coventry's pitch issues again. So on to Wigan. Kerr should have conceded a penalty. McLean put a great through ball to McGuinness, but he messed up the finish. And then the goal from Will Keane was a scrappy melee in the box. He taps it in. They're the sort of goals that he scored 26 of last season. And they're the sort of goals that he's going to need to score this year to keep Wigan up. Other than that, I haven't got much on this game. Is there anything you want to say on Coventry?
Well, I was going to say they did well to go 2 up against Millwall last week. But it's as soon as you go 2-0 up, and if you lose that lead of 2-0 and you end up losing the game 3-2, I say this, and I'll say this every week in, week out, it's unacceptable to go 2-0 up and to not see out the game. You cannot get into this division and not be able to see out a game. And I know they had the sending off. Harmer was deservedly sent off, but you've got to try and keep games tight once you're 2-0 up, 3-0 up, whatever. Because teams in this division can come back, and they will come back against you if you're not 100% on the focus, even when you're leading.
Yeah, I thought their goalkeeper again, Simon Moore, had an awful game. He was in no man's land for Cooper's goal. Didn't hold on to the second shot, which Hunneman rebounded. All that after his error at Sunderland in the opening week. I think he's having a poor start to the season. But funnily enough, as we'll get on to later, it's not even the goalkeeper that's having the worst start to the season, as our friend Joe Lumley will be demonstrating in a bit. But yeah, they couldn't capitalise on 10 men either, Coventry. Obviously, Bury was sent off for Millwall, and to not be able to hold a 2-goal lead, as you said, is poor. I did have Coventry to win this 2-1, but obviously as the game's abandoned, they'll have to be rescheduled.
Right, and so it's on to the first of the weekend fixtures, and we're just going to quickly glance over the scores that we've got. We're not going to go into too much detail because we don't want too long on this, but I've got for Birmingham Wigan on the weekend, I've got Birmingham to win 1-0.
I've gone 0-0. I think Wigan with a bit of extra rest, they'll have a bit of extra energy. They have been defensively sound, so I think 0-0. On to the next midweek game, we've got Norwich and Huddersfield. And if you looked at the table and you thought which team would be 24th and which team would be 14th, you'd probably have it the other way around. So the fact that Norwich are bottom and Huddersfield are 14th is a massive shock to me. What do you think about Norwich's poor start to the season?
Well, I do feel for Norwich in a way because I feel like in every game that they've played well. They deserve to get points out the game. But it's what we said since the start of the episode. There's a lot of difference between teams who've got those strikers that score. And in all fairness, Norwich do have Pukki, and he's a very, very good striker, but I don't think they're getting into enough clear-cut opportunities. They're creating a lot, but they're not getting into the opportunities where you might say, I don't know, a 0.4 XG, a 0.5 XG, as opposed to the little chances where like 0.05, 0.1 XG. Those are the type of chances Norwich, I think, are struggling to create. Nunes got his first goal for Norwich, which is only going to be a bonus to them. Even if they did lose that game, that's going to be a positive that he's off the mark. And it's just going to be a case where they've got to keep going and keep playing it where they are and try and find those extra cutting edge into their game. What do you think?
Yeah, they had 18 shots, 12 on target. The young lad, Aaron Ramsey, on loan from Villa, he forced a couple of good opportunities that were saved and he couldn't quite connect on the end of one cross. Pukki had forced a good couple of saves from Ingram. But yeah, the same as you, they're just not being clinical and not creating clear-cut opportunities. I do think they need some support for Pukki, whether it be another striker. I don't think Sargent and Ida will be able to score the goals around him. Yes, they've got there to rotate with him, but I don't think they'll score the goals. It was a great great free kick from Marcelino Nunes. That was a great goal, but Norwich have been shambolic defensively these opening couple of games. They gifted Wigan a goal and they gifted Hull arguably both goals here, and Norwich need to get both ends of the pitch better quickly if they're to be near the top six, let alone the automatics. As for their opponents, Huddersfield, massive result for me against Stoke. For me, this is the most important result of the weekend for a team. They'd lost both their opening games. The second best against Burnley, clearly, and then follow that up by another poor defeat. They really needed the 3 points here against a Stoke side that's been indifferent. And for me, it was back to the Huddersfield we saw of last year, scoring set plays, Nakayama scoring off a corner on his debut. And then really it was the key players that stepped up for me. Lee Nichols last year was the championship goalkeeper of the season. He saved the Lewis Baker poor penalty, but he still saved it. And then it's the key man for me, top scorer last season, Danny Ward, scored a lovely, well-worked goal. And then he led the breakaway fed the ball to Dwayne Holmes, who then squared it for Jordan Rhodes, who scored his 200th league goal and just carries on scoring for Huddersfield. He's prolific in this division. So for me, it was the senior players that got Huddersfield through: Ward, Nichols, Rhodes. And I think, this could be a turning point for Huddersfield. But unfortunately, I've had them to lose this game 2-1.
Yeah, so, I just want to touch about Jordan Rhodes because he really is a really good professional in this division. I've been really impressed with how Huddersfield managed that last game. Stoke had more of a shots. Both had 5 shots on target, but Stoke were almost getting a lot of shots on. But Huddersfield were really good in that breakaway, really good with the set pieces. And they really did make efficient work of how they got forward, and they got the 3 goals and they got the 3 points. But like you, they're up against a very good Norwich side who I fancy they will get their first win of the season, and I've got them to win 1-0. What do you think about Coventry and Huddersfield on the weekend?
Well, if it goes ahead, I think Coventry will win 2-1. That's my prediction. But a lot of factors. Obviously, the pitch being the first one, what state it's going to be in to play on.
Yeah.
If they are able to play on it, if Huddersfield take the confidence in and then get a result against Norwich, they could easily get something against Coventry. So for me, this is probably one of the hardest games to predict due to Coventry. They've missed 2 games. We've got a very limited sample on them, but I've had them to win 2-1.
I've got them to draw 0-0. I fancy Huddersfield being tight.
Okay, then on to the next game, which for me are 2 of the 3 surprise packages of the season for me, maybe 4. Preston, who currently sit in 7th, against Rotherham, who are in 8th. I'll start with Preston. Potts scored an absolutely phenomenal goal. It seems every weekend we're seeing a goal that we say, this could be goal of the season, that could be goal of the season. That flying karate kick volley off a beautiful Robbie Brady cross was phenomenal. But other than that, they didn't really create much game. That Ryan Lowe has Preston extremely hard to beat, but extremely what's the word? They don't create much. They're very clinical with what they do have. They're very hard to be, organised, hard working. But their games are tough watches for me. They're not the most open games. There's not many chances from either end. Very restrictive, but for me, they're one of the surprise packages of the season. What do you think of Preston and Rotherham?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to reiterate what you said. It was a brilliant goal. It was an excellent ball in. It was a brilliant movement to get onto the end of that ball, and it was a really cracking finish as well. But I'm just going to move swiftly onto Rotherham here, really. And I've got to say, it's been a long time since I've seen a team get that quickly out the blocks in the Championship, and to go 4-0 up by half time. I'm pretty sure they only had 4 shots on target in the whole game. But we'll come on to Reading in a bit, but the fact that they went 4-0 up, it's an absolute disgrace on Reading's behalf to letting them go that far up. But Rotherham, they took their chances, they had their chances, and they took them, and they did really, really well, and they managed the game well. What's your opinion on Rotherham?
Benny was brilliant again for me, and Washington. Their endless running up front really pressured the poor Reading defence into mistakes, and the Reading goalkeeper. Obviously, Wood scored the opener off a lovely Wiles cross. Then you had the Lumley disaster class for me. You know, he made an error that went unpunished by Washington, but then Washington scored one from a seemingly impossible angle, and how the keeper doesn't cover his near post from that far out. I know it's hit hard, but the fact that Lumley couldn't react or be in the right position for me is awful goalkeeping. And then the third goal is just Sunday league stuff. Yeah, you see that at the park on a Sunday morning, straight through him, not even a hard shot. And then I think the fourth goal he could have done better on, he's in no man's land. You either need to tell your defender to deal with it, or you take the ball and the man. And, he did nothing. He just ran out slowly, let Ogbenny run round him and tap it into an empty net. But that takes away nothing from Rotherham. I feel like they only had 4 shots on target because they eased off in the second half for me. They're 4-0 up. They didn't have to do the running, save themselves for the next game. I think this is going to be a really tight, tough game, like a typical Preston game. Not many chances, not many goals. I think 1-1.
I've actually gone Rotherham to win this 2-0. I think they're going to carry on that good form.
Oh, interesting. So obviously back to the weekend games. Preston play Watford. What are your thoughts of Preston Watford?
I think this is going to be a comfortable win for Watford. I think this is going to be 3-0 Watford.
See, I think that Preston will be able to stifle Watford. So I've gone 0-0.
Interesting.
On to the next game now. Swansea Millwall. Obviously Swansea in 13th. Millwall as high as 4th. Matt, what did you think of Millwall this weekend?
Well, Millwall have started this campaign brilliantly, and they find himself in a very promising position after 3 games. And Jake Cooper scored a really good goal. It was a really good looping header. The only thing you have to question in the game is that they let themselves get 2-0 to go 2 goals down, which is a character that we don't usually see from Millwall, especially at home as well. But they equally showed excellent character to bring it back to win 3-2 or 4. George Honeyman scored a good goal after coming back from his suspension. George Saville as well completing the goals. It was nice to see all 3 different Millwall players, and they seem to be coping somewhat quite well with the fact that they lost Jed Wallace, which I thought they might struggle a little bit after losing Jed Wallace. What do you think?
I think Millwall show extreme fight and passion every week for me. If there is a team to go 2-0 down and pull it back, especially at the Den,
yeah,
I'd back Millwall. I think they've got extreme passion under Gary Rowett. They're tough in the tackle. They all run through brick walls for him. No one will play Millwall this season and get an easy game.
No.
The set pieces are still phenomenal, even without Jed Wallace, which does surprise me. And the fact that sometimes that enthusiasm does spill over, in like Bury's red card, and they still manage to fight on and get the winner. For me, is incredible. I think Millwall will be up there. I nearly had them in my top 6 to start with. I think when we revisit our predictions, I think they'll be in there for me. Onto their opponent, Swansea, who obviously beat Blackpool 1-0 this weekend. 64% possession, 15 shots, 5 on target. It wasn't a straightforward win though. I do think Swansea were good value, but Andy Fisher, who's a player that we didn't know that much about going into this season, he put in a great performance, saving Jerry Yates' penalty. Some really good saves from Josh Bowler, who engineered himself into 1 or 2 good opportunities, and the keeper come up trumps. Obviously Swansea had chances as well. Grimes clipped the bar. Obafemi again, another big chance. 3 weeks in a row now that he's had a big chance and not scored. This one, the hardest of the 3, and the keeper, Grimshaw, did well to save, but he needs to start being more clinical. Grimes' deflected shot force, another good save from Grimshaw. And Swansea nicked it at the end. Obafemi was full of running all game. burst through when Blackpool were probably a little bit naive and overcommitted at the end, whereas some teams would have made sure they didn't lose a game. Blackpool were going all out to win. Obafemi's ran through, broke, squared it to substitute Encham, and he scored the winner. One concern for Swansea for me is that Joel Pirou has been very quiet the first 3 games, and Obafemi's not been very clinical. Goals win games. They need those two to be firing, especially when there's not much after those two in terms of goal scoring. Like you look at the midfield, Joe Allen, Grimes, they don't get many goals, if any, a season. So you really rely on those front two, and at the minute neither are firing. Obafemi keeps getting in the positions, which if you listen to anyone that's played the game, they always say they'd rather have someone that's getting in the positions and missing rather than not getting in the positions at all. Whereas Pirou's not even really had a sniff the first 3 games. So for me, that's a real area of concern for Swansea. And this game is actually really interesting to me. It's a complete juxtaposition of a complete contrast of styles. You've got Swansea, who I mentioned with Burnley, are the best passing team in the league. Then you've got Millwall, who's probably the best, long ball, tough tackling, old-fashioned team in the league. So I think it's going to be a really good, interesting, close game. And I've had Millwall to nick it 2-1.
I've actually got Millwall to win this game 1-0, and I've got to say, as you know, I know both teams quite well, and Swansea. It's really good that we just spoke about Millwall's fight and spirit themselves, and now they came back from two goals down to win 3-2. Even though there wasn't such of a fight back for Swansea, they still battled on until very late in the game, and they got that winner in the 87th minute. I think they're also another team with very, very good fight and spirit in this league. So I think, as you said, it will be very interesting. So what do you think about the weekend games? So firstly, we've got Norwich, Millwall on the weekend.
Yeah, I've had Millwall to win 1-0 against Norwich. I think Norwich won't be able to handle the set pieces of Millwall. I think Millwall can easily shut out the Norwich attack the way as long as Millwall don't defend how they did against Sheffield United, I think they'll keep Norwich at bay, and then I see Millwall scoring. So I've gone 1-0 Millwall. What was your thoughts?
I've gone 2-0 Norwich, and that's for Swansea Luton. I've actually gone 3-2 to Swansea. I think it's going to be a goals game, that game.
I've gone 2-1. I still think Luton aren't quite there in terms of goal scoring. Yeah, they've only scored 1 goal in their opening 3 games. And Swansea being at home make them a slight favourite to me. So I've gone 2-1 to Swansea. On to the next game now. QPR and Blackpool. Matt, what were your thoughts on QPR this weekend?
Well, QPR, I thought they did well. They managed the game sort of okay. But I just want to question their goalkeeper. He made a brilliant save for that first shot on goal, but he pushes it back into the danger. And that's something that I've always questioned keepers, is when I know there might be difficult shots. I know they come at pace. I know they come at power, but at this level, you have to know to be able to push it away from danger. Otherwise, you're immediately letting yourself into being conceded. And that's exactly what happened in this game. But what came as a bit of an unfortunate push out from Semi Dieng came from an absolutely brilliant bit of fortune going up the other end. And what I've got to say, what a cracking header it was from a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And he did well, even after scoring the equaliser. He was very, very focused, and I was very impressed with the save he made after he scored, because it would have been so easy for him to switch off and get that rush of adrenaline and it not end up being the result that he thought he won, but he did win that point for them in the end. And I think overall, it was a very exciting game to watch. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant game, made even better by a cracking atmosphere. I thought Ilias Chair had a phenomenal game. Obviously, he scored a brilliant free kick and also got the assist with a lovely cross for Dieng's header. We mentioned how important Chair and Willock are for QPR in terms of creativity and also contributing goals-wise, and Chair came to the forefront this game. The double save at the end by Dieng, for me, corrected what he did wrong on the goal. I'm fully in agreement with you that he should have pushed it out away from danger more. And he did that in the second goal, and then he pushed it out so that he had enough time to get up and then make the second save, but also the fact that it's from a harder angle because of where he put the ball made it a bit easier for him. And for me, it was brilliant goalkeeper. And to stay alert after scoring a goal that at the death, which you'd assume would be the last gasp equaliser, shows the focus and the determination to see the results through that Seny Dieng has. I've always rated him. I think he's a top goalkeeper in this division. Speaking of a top goalkeeper, I thought Dan Grimshaw had a great game for Blackpool. And he made 1 or 2 brilliant saves from Grimes, a couple from Obafemi. Ep6 made a brilliant last-ditch tackle on Jay Fulton in the box. And for me, Blackpool put in a lot of effort, but they just couldn't score. They had the chance gifted to them on the penalty, which for me wasn't a penalty. Yet another penalty decision Championship officials got wrong. Dougal went down with, for me, little to no contact. I'm erring on the side of no, so I'd say he dived. The penalty was poor though, straight down the middle, no real power, saved by Fisher's feet. But they were a bit naive at the end for me, Blackpool. 87th minute, you've got a corner. Leaving one man back for me is a bit naive. 1 point's better than none at this early stage of the season. I admire their bravery in trying to win the game, but for me it was naive and it cost them. So for me, I've had QPR to win this game 2-1.
Yeah, I've got QPR to win this game 3-0, and I've got to say, I thought Blackpool were a little bit unfortunate in the second half. I thought they played really well, and it seemed like they didn't really get the rub of the green. But you've got to credit Swansea again because they battled on in the game. But let's go on to the weekend games so Burnley play Blackpool. What do you think is going to happen?
2-0 Burnley for me.
Yeah, I've gone 2-0 Burnley as well as QPR Rotherham.
This one's a tough one for me because I feel like Rotherham are playing really well, but QPR are a bit up and down at the minute. So I've gone 1-1 in that game.
So I'm going to sound like a Millers fan now, and I've got Rotherham to also win this game 1-0.
If we do your predicted table, I reckon Rotherham are Right then, so on to Stoke and Middlesbrough. I'm going to start off with Stoke. Poor display. I think there's a few managers under pressure in this league. I think Michael O'Neill is definitely one of them. Baker missed a penalty at 0-0 after Lauren got hit in the head with a high boot. Definitely a penalty. Probably one of the only ones this week that, for me, was a penalty and was called right. They did then hit the post. But there's a lot of problems for me at Stoke. Another set-piece goal conceded. Obviously, they conceded the 2 against Millwall, which could have been 4 or 5. Scored again against Huddersfield. Conceded 1 against Huddersfield. Lewis Baker obviously missed the penalty, but redeemed himself as such with the low-driven shot outside the box, which was a good finish. But for me, the biggest issues are, to start with, Campbell and Gale are not firing, whether they're not fit, whether they're not enjoying the system, whether maybe they're not as good. They've both had a big injury. Campbell had a really bad ACL. Gale's had a few big injuries now, and he's also getting on. Are both the same player that we were expecting? That Stoke are really struggling to score goals for me, and they've got the names there. It's just an anomaly for me why they're not performing. And also they were getting carved open by Huddersfield. Like 2 goals that Huddersfield scored at the end, there were fast breaks, carved open, and squared across goal, and there was a man in acres of space to tap it in. So for me, there's real problems for Stoke at both ends of the pitch and at set pieces. I think they need Sutter back at the back, definitely. He had 6'6" will help with the set pieces, I think, and with the organisation. But for me, there's a lot of problems at the minute at Stoke. What do you think about Stoke and what do you think about Middlesbrough?
Firstly, I just want to reiterate what you said about the penalty. It was a really, really poor penalty, but he did make up for himself, and he did equalise with a very, very well taken finish. I've got to say for Gale though, he did take his chance, but it was unfairly ruled offside. It was onside. I watched it back a couple of times from different angles, and it was onside, and that would have took it to 2-1 ahead. So it could have been a completely different outcome of a game.
Another poor decision there this week, and that was another one.
And I think that if that happened, you never know. We could be talking about a Stoke 2-1 win right now, but instead they pushed 2 on for that winner, and they got carved open, as you said, too easily by Huddersfield going forward, who, as unlike Stoke, they took their chances absolutely magnificently. As for Borough, they did really well to fight back against Sheffield United. They went behind twice, and I thought for the most part in that game they actually controlled the game, but it was a calamitous own goal. It was really laughable. All he needed to do was to take his time. He didn't have to boot it away straight away. There was no one on him. That's where you need a bit of communication either from your goalkeeper or your centre halves, your midfield. Just shout, take your time. He had no one around him, and he just booted it. And unfortunate for him, it went into the back of the net, but it was completely preventable. What do you think on Borough?
I agree about the own goal. Right foot slice. He's very predominantly left footed, but with all that time, the ball wasn't at like mega speed, like going
No.
flashed across the box. It was sort of like not trickling through, but medium pace. He should have been able to wrap his foot around it, even with rushing it. But I agree with you. There was poor communication from the goalkeeper, the centre backs. No one told him he had a bit of time. So it was really poor. We've mentioned that Middlesbrough need strikers to score the goals, and maybe the same one that's been there all along in Chuba Akpom. Really well worked goal, the first equaliser from Akpom.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Cut back, passed into the net. Really nice goal. And then the set piece, flick on at the back. Akpom reacts first, like a top striker would. Could he be the answer? Duncan Watmore missed another big chance. It seems like him and Obafemi every week having a competition who can keep missing the most chances. Another big chance.
I think Grant's fighting with you there as well.
Yeah. And I think the atmosphere was electric as well at Middlesbrough Stadium. It was a really good game to watch. But yeah, I've gone for Borough to win this 2-0.
I've got Borough to win this 1-0.
And I'll also predict they'll score off a set piece. Reading versus Blackburn now. Matt, do you want to take us away on Blackburn?
So I thought Blackburn exercised their game plan really, really well against West Brom. They kept things really tight at the back. They let West Brom have the ball, which is West Brom might have wanted to have the ball, but they weren't letting West Brom do what they wanted with. They kept it very tight, and they were really good value on the counter attack. And it was really good counter attacking football. And I thought Blackburn played the game really well. Brereton Diaz, it was a really good finish. I thought. Same with Gallagher. I thought, mate, there are arguments that the goalkeepers should have done better, but I think you can't take away from the finish. And those two really, really good finishes. Got to question the midfield and the defence for West Brom whether they could have stopped it. But again, we're talking about Blackburn, and you can't take away from the strikers. And I just think there's two excellent pieces of finishing. And both me and Luke had Blackburn to struggle this season after losing the manager, but they're 3 wins from three, and I think it's quite surprised me really. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I had them to struggle. I think I had them in the mid-table with Brereton Diaz. I've always got goals there. And for me, an underrated player in their setup is Sam Gallagher. Yeah. I think when you can get him and Brereton Diaz near each other, link-up play, as we saw for the second goal, is brilliant. It's old-fashioned strike partnership, like link-up play. It's brilliant. Your Cole and your York, your Benzema and Ronaldo. It was brilliant. Big shout out to a player that I mentioned, although I actually said his name wrong when we did the preview show for the season. I said there's a young 17-year-old centre back at Blackburn. I accidentally called him Adam Phillips. It's not, it's Ash Phillips. I thought he was brilliant. He wouldn't have thought he was 17. I thought he did really well against Carl Grant, who's a good goal scorer in this division. But one thing that impressed me the most about Blackburn is they play really nice football. They have a lot of really nice. They're not necessarily the most physically imposing side, but for me, they mastered the dark arts amazingly. The tactical fouls, taking the sting out of the game, the little bit of time wasting here and there. There was 11 minutes added on time at the end of that game, and some of it had stemmed from Blackburn, taking the time over the throws. Every time West Brom got on top, Blackburn managed to defend well, then take the sting out of it. For me, it really did impress me, and I think that's the thing they've lacked under Tony Mowbray.
Yeah.
Times under Tony Mowbray, they were too nice. If you could outplay them, you could get through them because they couldn't kick you, they couldn't get back in the game, and they concede loads of goals. But for me, they were really streetwise in this game. Obviously, you mentioned Brereton Diaz, phenomenal. I think it's imperative that they keep him. Obviously, we're going to go into their opponents, Reading now, who had probably the worst first half of any team so far in the Championship season. Lumley was at fault for 3 goals and could have conceded another. We've touched on them already. The one that went through his legs is despicable and unforgivable for me. I'd be playing Dean Bazanis next game, who's their other goalkeeper. But people that are getting away with it at the minute at Reading for me are Holmes, Nesta Guinness-Walker and McIntyre. For me, they are League One at best. They've just signed Guinness-Walker from Wimbledon. He weren't even Wimbledon's first choice left back in a back four. I know he's playing wing back, which is his preferred position and where he played for Wimbledon, but he didn't set League One alight. So I don't get why they're expecting him to be able to do the same in the Championship. Holmes and McIntyre, for me, are the reason they conceded loads of goals last season, along with Liam Moore before he got loaned out. None of them are good defenders, and then when your goalkeeper's basically chucking goals in the net for fun, Reading are going to concede absolute hatfuls this year. So it's really up to those Reading attackers to try and do something the other end. What did you think?
Well, I might go on the record a little bit here, and I think with Joe Lumley in goal, with the state of Reading's defence at the moment, they could quite possibly surpass the most goals conceded in the league. And
That's not a bad shout.
And I really would not be surprised with, because I think defensively they're poor. They've got okay attackers. They've got attackers who can do it in this league. But I think at the other end of the pitch is where they're going to really struggle. And if you don't have a good defence, then your attackers are just going to lose any hope. And I think it's a season of worry for Reading, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought I've got them to lose this game again, 4-0.
Yeah, I've gone 4-0 as well. And then in the weekend game against Middlesbrough, I've had them to lose 2-0.
I've actually got them to scrape a 1-1 draw in this game, but I know we spoke about Borough's strikers and how Akpom might be that bound striker, but I still worry a little bit about Borough going forward, so I think it's going to be a bit of a boring game.
Yeah. On to the next game now. And this game for me really excites me. Sheffield United versus Sunderland, two very well supported clubs. Sunderland for me are the surprise package so far this season. What do you think? What do you think of the home team, Sheffield United?
I've got to say, what an excellent goal from Sander Berge. I thought it was a really, really well taken goal. Foderingham had done really well as well. He did well to make a couple of good saves, but he almost gave away a very cheap goal as well to Borough in that game. And I think he's a bit of a shaky keeper. He's not one. I don't think he's one of the best in the league. He's not so great at passing it out. I think he's a good shot stopper, but he's not very good at with the ball at his feet. I thought it was definitely not a penalty. There's a penalty shout, never a penalty for me. And I think the one player I really was impressed by who didn't get on the score sheet was Undaye. He seemed to get in some really, really dangerous positions, and I really enjoyed watching him play.
Yeah, Iliman Ndiaye, we spoke about him in the first couple of podcasts. He's a really creative force for Sheffield United.
Yeah.
But at the minute, for me, they're not creating those chances. So
No.
for me, they're getting in the positions, but either the final pass or the final shot is awful for me at the minute. Only 4 shots on target this game. I'm going to go on to Sunderland. Unreal atmosphere in their game, absolutely. And I think in Stewart and Sims, again, like we speak about Diaz and Gallagher, 2 brilliant strikers that can link up. Stewart follows up Dan Neil's shot to make it 1-0. As we spoke about, Dieng could have palmed it a bit better. That's his second goal of the season. Then Sims with Alex Pritchard, who I thought was at the heart of everything in their game at the weekend.
Fully agree.
He sort of looked like the Pritchard of old that was at Huddersfield and at Norwich. A little 1-2 with Sims, albeit a bit fortunate the way the ball broke to him. He scored. That's his 3rd goal in 2 games. I said when Sims was available that teams at the top should have took a gamble on him. I mentioned West Brom. I thought they should have definitely took a gamble on him. Burnley definitely took a gamble on him. And Sunderland have been the beneficiaries of getting him. And, it was an open game there. That's my only concern with Sunderland is how open they make it. Their midfield's quite easily bypassed and their defence isn't the best. There was 36 shots in this game. It was brilliant for the neutral like me to watch. They had 16 shots out on target, but you're not always going to be able to outscore every team in this league. So in this game, I'm going goals galore again. I've had 2-2. What do you think?
I've actually gone 2-1 Sheffield United in this game. So let's go on to their weekend games. And so what do you think between Sheffield United and Blackburn, which I think is going to be a good game?
I think Sheffield United have got 2 really tough fixtures in next week. I've gone 1-1 in that game.
I'm actually going to change my prediction to what I had with the Sheffield United. I'm actually going to go 1-0 Blackburn.
Okay. And what do you think about Stoke Sunderland?
I think this will be where Stoke gets a win, and I think they'll win this 1-0.
I've gone 3-2 Sunderland.
Right. So
last game. Go on, you take us away.
Yeah, so I thought West Brom as well. They played really good stuff. They've in the first 3 games they've played some really good stuff and only come away with 2 points in the first 3 games. So I think they've been unlucky. They've had a really, really tough start, but I think it's a similar story to last season, and it's their finishing. They get into excellent positions. They create the most chances in the league and probably got one of the highest XGs, but have only scored twice. Is it this season? 3 times. 3 times, I think. Yeah, 3 times. And that's just not enough for a side looking towards the top half of a division. And there's been a lot of links with Delap. There's links with Gilmore coming in as well.
Lewis Grabban.
Lewis Grabban, good shout. But there's also another weakness I see in West Brom, and that's without their new signing, Yukuzlu, when he's not in midfield, they seem to be particularly weak. It seems to pass Livermore and Malumbi by, who they work hard on and off the ball, but they're not really up to the standard of a top half championship side these days. And it was a terrible mistake for me. For the second goal from Furlong, it was almost parallel to the same goal that they conceded at Borough, and I think they've just got to improve in all areas of the field ever so slightly, just if I want to see results improve.
Yeah, I agree. I think West Brom need 4 players to challenge for automatics. Striker, most important. The top for big chances with 8, top for big chances missed with 6, top for XG with an XG difference, so for underperforming or overperforming, they've got the biggest variance. So striker for me, whether it's Delap, obviously they've missed out on a few. Sims, obviously unfortunate injury to Dawel DK, which we now know is out for 2-3 months. Striker definitely. They need to get Yukuzlu fit and into that midfield. And for me, they need a full back, because although we sung his praises against Watford because he was brilliant, for some reason you get one good game with Darnell Furlong and then 3 or 4 bad ones. And for me, having watched West Brom, David Button doesn't convince me. I mentioned that there was a few goalkeepers that have moved to clubs in this league. Nathan Baxter, for one, who West Brom could have benefited from picking up. And I feel they're the 4 positions that West Brom are currently lighting. I do think they have been unlucky these opening few games. They have played, for me, 3 of the best 5 or 6 teams in the league. But they do need to start picking up some points now. On to Cardiff, who are the 4th and final surprise team for me this season. They played really well against Birmingham. Wintle dragged his shot wide, nearly scored. Ruddy made a fantastic double save. O'Dowda again ran riot, this time on the right-hand side. Normally we see him on the left. He put a beautiful ball in for Philligan to score his first goal. Funnily enough, a Villaloni scoring against Birmingham. Jamilu Collins has been phenomenal for me at left back. He was brilliant when they went down to 10 men and managed to win the other week. And then this week he made an unreal last-ditch tackle on Scott Hogan to stop him going through. Waters missed a one-on-one. Atete missed a free header. Again, we mentioned that Cardiff are another team that need that clinical number 9. These 2 young lads, high ceiling, high potential, but can they do it right now to get in the goals? I personally doubt it. They were creative against Birmingham, which was something that we hadn't saw in the opening 2 games for them. 16 shots, 7 on target. And I think they're doing really well under Steve Morrison. However, in this game, I actually have West Brom to win 2-0. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I've just got to commend Cardiff's activity in the transfer market. They did a lot of their business really early, and I'm really impressed with how they've settled in quite quickly. I think they're still 1 or 2 short, but I'm like you. I've got West Brom to win this 1-0. And let's quickly go on to the weekend games. What do you think about West Brom versus Hull?
I think that'd be a 1-1 draw.
I've got that down as 2-0 West Brom. And finally, Bristol Cardiff.
See, I think this is a tough one because derby games are hard to predict. Cardiff and Bristol have been inconsistent. Bristol have been a bit unlucky. I've gone 2-1 Bristol, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was a draw.
I've gone 2-1 Bristol just because I think Cardiff struggle a little bit more on the road than they do at home.
I agree. Right then, 36 games all talked about there in one episode. Thanks, Matt, for all your research and all your help. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Peace out.
Brilliant. Thank you.